So for all of us who absolutely live, eat, and breathe bass fishing, spring is the best time of the year. Spring is when the majority of the big bass will go shallow, even for just a few days, and it gives you the chance to catch a huge number of bass and also the biggest bass of your life. And speaking of the biggest bass, there's a time period called the pre-spawn, right before that springtime spawn, when those fish are extra fat and extra willing to chase down your lures and eat them. But as with everything in bass fishing, it tends to get complicated depending on where you are in the country as to how to best target those fish. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the best pre-spawn lures in my experience for those deep, clear bodies of water, whether you're talking lakes or ponds, to help you guys catch more fish. My name's Tyler, and let's talk about it. Well, how's it going, folks, and welcome back to TRF. My goal on this channel is to help you guys become better bass anglers, and as you'll notice, we are at a beautiful location right now. I could turn the camera right now, show you guys the waterfall behind me. Oh, it's just beautiful in here, tucked away from the wind. And the body of water that we are on today is named Lake Whitney. It is a very, very deep, clear body of water here in Central Texas. And so I want to get on a lake like this and also show some fish catches from other very deep, clear bodies of water throughout my time fishing to explain to you guys my top 3 plus 4, 5, 6, whatever. A certain number of lures that I find best to target those fish in the pre-spawn time period. So let's jump in. But actually, before we jump in, if you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Here on this channel, we are all about catching more bass, and so if you are all about that as well, you're gonna love it here on TRF. And everything that I talk about in this video, as well as the fish catches that I will link in the end of this video, those full videos will be linked down in the video description. And if you are ever curious if I've made a video on a certain topic, just go on YouTube and search Tyler's Reel Fishing and then insert that topic. So whether it's Tyler's Reel Fishing Frog or Tyler's Reel Fishing Chatterbait, Toledo Bend, a lake name, anything like that, you guys can search on YouTube and you'll probably find a video about it. Enough talking, let's jump into it. So a few things that you guys have to understand about what the pre-spawn means. Now, if you have not seen the video that I just put out, I believe a few days ago, it is detailing my favorite lures for pre-spawn fishing in your more shallow, dirtier bodies of water, because you are not going to throw the same lures in the vast majority of cases in these two different body of water situations. The shallow, dirty, and the deep, clear are going to require a lot different lure set and skill set in order to catch those fish. So in that video, I explain exactly what the pre-spawn is, and so if you are not familiar with that term, what that means, make sure you guys click the link up here in this corner and down below. In that video, I do a lot better job of explaining what the pre-spawn, spawn, and post-spawn are. I just don't want to bore you guys with the details on this video. But the thing you do have to understand about the pre-spawn in deep, clear bodies of water is, one, the pre-spawn is going to come later in the year than it will on your shallow, dirtier bodies of water. Just based on the way that water warms up from the sunlight, from wintertime to springtime, that water has to warm in order to get those fish ready to spawn in that middle to upper 60s water temperature. And so if you have dirty water, you're going to have more particles in that water that grab sunlight, hold on to it, and thus warm up the water in the general area. So I'm talking, dirt, wood particles, pieces of grass, anything in the water can soak in heat. Rock does do a good job of soaking in heat, but does not do a good job of spreading it around to the water around it. So you could find an area in a lake like today, with of course the sun out, that the back of the creek in clear water, the very, very back in 2 foot of water is going to be 65 degrees. The main lake is still going to be 50 degrees because of how deep the water is. It takes a lot longer for that water to warm up throughout the column. There are not as many particles in the water to gather that heat and hold it in, and so your water warms up later in the year. I'm not saying like months later, I'm saying 2 to 3 weeks later in a deep, clear body of water than it does in a shallow body of water. So for example, right now here in Texas, the bass are spawning in the ponds. The shallow, dirtier ponds they are spawning in, and even I guarantee you, some of the dirtier lakes, the lake I was on yesterday, the water clarity was 1 to 2 foot, which I would say is basically stained water. It's not clear, but it's not quite dirty. The fish were spawning already there. Here, the water temperature is 52. The bass are not even close to spawning. So give it 2 weeks of really warm weather and warm nights, and these fish are going to be in the same stage, like I said, 2 to 3 weeks later than the ones in the shallow bodies of water. So I hope I didn't over-explain that. I just feel like that needs to be said, that if you're somebody that likes to fish multiple different lakes in your area, and you kind of have diversity of bodies of water, whether it's ponds or lakes, if one pond is deep and clear and the one literally right next to it is shallow and dirty, the bass in those 2 ponds are going to be in 2 completely different stages. The second thing to understand about the pre-spawn in this type of watercolor is that the fish are most often going to suspend all the way up to the point where they cruise the banks to pair up and get ready to spawn, and then immediately after that are back out to suspending. There are not many times that I have found in deep, clear bodies of water, and I grew up on one on Lake Travis. I have not found that many of these bass will cruise the shallows for very long before they spawn. So your lures, and the lures that I talk about here in a second, are really going to relate to the water column. If you don't know what the word suspend means when bass suspend in the water column, I made an entire video about that and has some awesome fish catches, so I will link that one in the video description as well. And so due to the deep, clear water in these reservoirs, the bass are most often going to be more weary of your boat, your presence, and so longer casts, lighter line are going to be very crucial. Sometimes smaller, downsizing your lures, more finessey stuff is going to be crucial to getting these fish to bite in the pre-spawn. They might still want to chase down your lures just like they do in the pre-spawn. So we're going to talk about basically all moving baits here that bass can chase down and eat, allowing you to, of course, stay warmer if it's cold in the pre-spawn, and also I'm just a more moving bait type person, and so that's what I recommend in most of my videos, especially for this time period, because I found that in most scenarios, bass will chase down a moving bait in the pre-spawn. So without further ado, I say it's time we hop into the top 3+ lures that I have for deep, clear water reservoirs, starting with lure number 1, which is the swim bait. The reason why I'm starting with the swim bait is that I feel like it is the most accessible lure for all of us in our bodies of water. I don't care if you're in a relatively shallower but still clear water pond or a super deep lake like this. A swim bait on a jig head just like that is one heck of a way to catch fish. It works everywhere. You cast it out there, you let it sink a little bit depending on how deep those fish are suspending, and you reel it straight back in, letting the paddle on that swim bait do its job. There will be times, let's say, where that water is a little bit more dirty. So when I say dirty water, I mean the shallow, dirty pond video that I just released, that's 3-foot water clarity, visibility, or less. This is going to be 3 foot or more. And so let's say you're in the kind of 2 to 6 foot range that in some bodies of water is considered clear. I would say you throw an underspin. Especially if you have any kind of cloud cover and maybe a little bit of wind. Those fish need a little bit of flash like this in order to catch fish. I also have a video, I believe I released back in the late winter about the underspin, and I will leave that one linked in the video description. Guys, there's tons of good stuff down there. Check it out. But the soft plastic swim bait just imitates any kind of bait fish. Of course, you're going to want to match the hatch as close as possible, so you're going to want to throw the swim bait that as closely resembles the bait fish in your body of water as possible, but really just getting something down there and swimming in front of their face. If they're hungry, they're going to chase it down and eat it. So here's a few fish catches from a video that I released a few days ago, catching tons of fish on this exact swim bait right here in a deep, clear pond. There he is. Oh, get out of there. Right, perfect. Look at the way that he ate that swim bait down the mouth. He wanted that thing. Beautiful fish. Beautiful fish. Oh! Yes! All right, that was fun. You gotta keep these fish out of the brush. I probably shouldn't be throwing on a 10-pound line, but it's crazy. All right, they're halfway in between us. If you're wondering what combo I'm throwing, this is the not exactly best swim bait combo I have, but it's a jerkbait special loose custom speed stick. It's like a 6'7" medium light. Honestly, it works pretty well if you want to throw a swim bait on a bait caster. And then I got the BB1 Pro, the best long casting kind of winding reel. Oh, I had the fish the whole time. It's crazy. This one feels bigger. Yeah, this one feels bigger. Oh, biggin'. Yeah, it looks bigger at least. And I got 10-pound Seagar of Brazex fluorocarbon, which is what I usually throw crankbaits and jerkbaits with. Yeah, he's bigger. Yeah, he's bigger. Well, only like 4. Not a huge fish, but a good quality Texas pre-spawn specimen. Gosh, he ate it. They are eating it on the fall. Come on, bring it in. Bring it. Ah, his teeth are grinding up against it. Oh, he's so fat. Oh, he's so fat. Gosh. Oh, that fish would only go 3 pounds, but
he ate it.
So now that we've talked about what I think is the most accessible lure for people on the bank and people in the boats for this pre-spawn time period, I'm gonna go on to lure, or category I should say, number 2, and that is going to be my deeper hard baits, the jerk baits and the crankbaits. The reason why I'm gonna lump these together in the same category is because I feel like depending on the fish's mood, they really serve almost the same purpose. So if the fish are in a chasing mood and they want the bait presented somewhere in the water column above the bottom, it's really hard to beat a jerkbait or a crankbait. There's tons of situations in which one outshines the other, but I think when the fish are starting to move shallow, they are wanting to feed, they just want something that goes by their face, triggers a reaction, and in clear water, I think the natural colors and the natural action of a slowly retrieved crankbait and a slowly retrieved jerkbait is gonna get those fish to bite. Now the crankbaits I'm going to reserve for when the water is clearer than the video I just released a few days ago, but not quite super gin clear. I'm gonna throw the jerkbait in that scenario. And on the lake that I'm on today, and the lake that you're gonna see some jerkbait fish catches on at the end of this segment, that is a very clear body of water. That was Smith Lake in northern Alabama. Now, I just released an instructional video on the jerkbait, so I'm not really gonna go into a whole lot of why the jerkbait is effective, but trust me, it is. And if you're curious about it, I will have that video linked down in the video description. But it's just a perfect shad imitation. If the bass are not quite in a crazy chasing mood, you retrieve it really slowly. And if those bass are getting ready to feed and spawn and they want to jerk real fast, you can work this thing incredibly fast, just like you can work a flat-sided crankbait like this, which of course is better for your lower 50s in water temperature. And then as soon as that water gets a little bit warmer, those bass want a little bit more wide wobbly crankbait, which is where the XD and the Series crankbaits from Strike King fit into the line. This here is the Series 5. I love throwing the Series 3 when those bass are a little bit shallower. And I do not always have to make contact with the bottom on a crankbait to catch fish. That's one misconception about the crankbait. You don't always have to be hitting the bottom. You can, and that's where you're gonna catch most of your bass. But if those bass are suspending in very clear water, oftentimes it's actually to your benefit to have it just swim slowly by their face, not on the bottom. So sit back and enjoy some awesome jerkbait fish catches from a deep, clear lake.
Gosh. Oh gosh, okay, yep, they're on the jerkbait deal. Oh my gosh, that thing slammed it with a 3-pounder. Yep, 3-pounder. Anybody around? Oh gosh. Okay. I know exactly what these fish are doing, dude. I know exactly. That guy's spawning. Heck yeah. I know exactly what they're doing. He got all 3 hooks in him. Oh my gosh. 2-pounder. Thanks for playing, buddy. It's not the same. Oh, okay, good grief. I just got one. Oh my gosh. Ah, gosh, what do I got here? All right. We know the fish are here, and they are eating a jerkbait. That is fairly certain. Oh gosh, yep, biggin. Oh, that's a huge one, holy cow. Oh my gosh, that's a big one. Oh gosh, that's big, that's like a 4-pounder. Maybe not 4, maybe 3. But he's bigger. Sorry, bud, came in the boat so hard. Yeah, that's a high 2. It's like a 2.7. Heck yeah. See you, bud.
The last lure in my lineup, and I realize I'm kind of going from early pre-spawn to just before the spawn. So when the water temperature is colder, getting warmer, I'm gonna start with that swim bait slow rolled. Then I'm gonna throw the crankbaits and the jerkbaits over deeper water. And then as that water gets really close to the 60s, middle 60s, when those bass are really close to spawning, in clear water, besides a shallower version of a swim bait, so let's say a lighter jig head or a pre-rigged swim bait, I love throwing a square bill crankbait. So even though the square bill crankbait is definitely a lure that gets in their face and causes a commotion, I have found that bass will still hit it in clear water. You just have to cover a lot of water and throw it on lighter line and reel it slower. That's kind of the general idea. Make a really long cast because those fish are going to be weary if they're in shallow, clear water. The lighter line allows this lure to look way more natural. But especially around shallow rock and shallow wood, I have found a square bill to be incredibly effective. I think the shallow clear water lure is kind of a toss-up to me between the square bill and the swim bait. As I mentioned, I kind of throw each one interchangeably, but especially if you have any wind on your bank and the fish are moving up shallow, a bluegill square bill is just an incredible way to catch fish. Now, just like I talked about with the video links in the video description, I will also have the tackle that I throw all these lures on because, like I mentioned, I love going lighter line, so I will have a pound test fluorocarbon line guide down in the description as well. So here are a few fish catches of a square bill crankbait in shallow, clear water.
Are there big ones? Oh, that was not a fish, that was a rock. That's a fish. Oh my goodness. Oh, that feels like a big one. That feels like a big one. It is, it is, it is, yes sir. Yes, sir. Is it a catfish? There's no way it's a catfish. It's got to be a bass. No? It's not fighting like a bass, though. But I'm going to fight it like it is. Oh, it is. 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 Let's go, baby. That's 3 casts in a row. This is my kayak net. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. No, I just botched it. Yes. Oh, yo, I almost just completely messed that up. Look what I did. I hooked it on the net. Oh, that's a chunk. That's like a 5. See how much she weighs? Yep, 4.88. Almost a 5-pounder.
Now, 2 more lures that I have for you guys that I'm going to call the wild card lures for deep, clear, pre-spawn bass fishing is going to be the finesse jig and the Alabama rig. Now, the reason why I have the Alabama rig, this one right here, in the wild card category is because it's not because it only works in certain situations. I have it tied on all throughout the pre-spawn every single time I go fishing. The reason why it's in the wild card is because it's not necessarily an accessible lure to a lot of you guys. So it's expensive. All the swim bait jig heads, the swim baits, the A-rig itself, the gear you have to throw a heavy A-rig on, it's not necessarily an accessible lure to a lot of you guys. So I'm gonna tell you, it catches the snot out of some fish when they're biting it. There's almost nothing that can beat the Alabama rig in the pre-spawn if they're eating it, but like I said, it doesn't really apply to a lot of you guys that fish in ponds, especially, even if it's clear water, the shallower ponds, it's really hard to retrieve that lure and not get it snagged every once in a while because of all the exposed hooks on it. So if you have a bass boat like me and you wanna learn more about how to fish the A-rig, or a deeper pond like a Corey pond and you wanna fish the A-rig, I have the instructional video for that linked in the video description below. But the finesse jig is definitely a lure that is accessible to everybody. And the reason why I picked that as my last pre-spawn lure for deep clear water is because some lakes have a great population of small crawfish, especially up north in y'all's northern lakes. I would say from Missouri on up, you guys have a ton of little crawfish. Oftentimes in Minnesota, Canada, New York, you guys have the rusty crawfish, and a finesse jig perfectly imitates a little rusty crawfish. Here in Texas, we have crawfish, but I have not found, since I was in high school, as many crawfish. Now, of course, I don't walk the bank and flip over as many rocks as I used to, but I just don't see as many crawfish as I used to, and I found that fish are more relating, lately, at least in my experience, to bait fish in the pre-spawn in these clear bodies of water than they do crawfish. The reason why I talked about the red lipless crankbait and the red and green pumpkin chatterbaits for the dirtier, shallower body of water in the pre-spawn video is because they have crawfish that are, because bass are oftentimes keying in on crawfish during that time of the year in those bodies of water. In the pre-spawn in these bodies of water, at least where I'm from, I haven't found that to be a hugely successful pattern. I'm not saying it can't be, because I've been wrong before, and guess what? I'm gonna be wrong again. But I'm just saying in the vast majority of cases, I found that bait fish imitation lures are going to be best for the pre-spawn. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If I have any more fish catches, I'll leave them here at the end of the video. I just love showing you guys pre-spawn action. Pre-spawn is basically done here in Texas. I'm on a lake today where the pre-spawn is still going on, although it's really, really windy, so I can't quite get these fish to eat in the places I want them to. I know exactly where they are, but I can't exactly get to them. But the spawn is just around the corner, and we're gonna have some awesome spawn content coming for you guys. Talking about bed fishing, talking about just regular shallow water bass fishing. There's gonna be a lot of cool stuff for you guys coming down the pipeline. And we got a new camera. If you've been able to tell, the footage is just like juicy quality. I can finally see myself on a screen over here. Life is good. Thank you all for subscribing, and we'll see you guys next time on TRF.